Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Shadows and Serpentes by Alenthedragon. This is a fan fiction about what if Luffy eat a different devil fruit instead of the gum fruit. He will have the dragon fruit, model dragon of darkness and shadows. He is joined by Hancock, who is his age here, and has a different fruit as well. Hope you like it. Adios.
2 days later, as the Shadow Dragon pirates sailed on towards Little Garden, the atmosphere on deck was one of determination and hard work. Having completed a rigorous training session, Luffy addressed the crew. Congratulations, Kuro, Zoro, Sanji, and Alvida. You're using your armament hockey like pros, but remember, this is only the start. The four nodded in appreciation, their spirits boosted by Luffy's praise. Luffy also extended his gratitude to Yamato for training them, acknowledging her efforts in honing their skills. Turning to Yamato, Luffy gave his next instruction. Yamato, could you go and get Nico Robin from the cells and bring her to a private meeting with me and Hancock? Yamato nodded, setting off to fulfill the task. About 30 minutes later, Luffy and Hancock were in their cabin when Yamato brought Nico Robin in. Luffy smiled warmly. Yamato, get the cuffs off her. Yamato took out a key and unlocked the seastone cuffs that had bound Robin. Robin, though free, stood a bit confused and wary, knowing the formidable reputations of Luffy and Hancock. Stories about Hancock's actions against a celestial dragon and a member of Big Mom's family, as well as Luffy's legendary battle with Kaido, were widely known. What do you want with me? Robin asked, her voice steady despite her apprehension. Hancock answered, you're a hard woman to find, Robin. Luffy and I have actually been searching for you for 2 years to recruit you. Why should I join you? Robin replied, skeptical. Luffy responded with certainty, simple. We can make your dream come true. Robin's skepticism deepened. You don't know anything about me. Oh, we do, Luffy said, his tone suggesting confidence. In fact, 2 good friends of ours told us about you. Robin's mind raced. Who could they be referring to? No one knew her dream except. Before she could voice her doubts, Luffy spoke again, as if reading her thoughts. You don't believe us, do you? Well, I can prove it. Luffy walked over to his desk, retrieving a special Mushi. He dialed a number and spoke into the receiver. Hey, Dad, you there? A voice came through the line. Oh, Luffy, what is it? Oh, nothing much. I have Nico Robin here, and I think there's somebody who wants to talk to her. The voice belonging to Dragon replied, got you, wait a moment. Robin, curious, asked, who is that? Hancock's lips curled into a smile. Oh, nobody special. Just my future father-in-law. You've probably heard of him. His name is Monkey D. Dragon. Robin froze at the mention of that name, her eyes widening in recognition. Before she could process the information, another voice emerged from the Mushi, softer, familiar. Robin, are you alive? Robin's heart skipped a beat, her voice trembling as she responded. Mother, is that you? Robin, with tears forming around her eyes, picked up the speaker. As she spoke to her mother, Olivia, the emotions she had buried for years came flooding back. Olivia explained to her how she had instructed Luffy and Hancock to find and recruit her. She revealed an astonishing truth. Luffy's mother, the she-devil Lilith, had saved Olivia and Saul from the Buster Call, even fighting against Aokiji in the process. Robin was overwhelmed, struggling to comprehend the reality that her mother and dear friend were alive. Olivia was with the Revolutionary Army, and Saul was safe in Elbaf. Robin and Olivia spoke for what felt like moments suspended in time, reconnecting and sharing their stories, until the call ended. As Robin put down the receiver, she turned to face Luffy, Hancock, and Yamato, who, like her, had tears in her eyes, sharing in the joy and relief of the reunion. Thank you, Robin said, her voice steady and filled with newfound hope. Luffy smiled warmly. Do you accept our offer, Nico Robin? With determination and a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years, Robin nodded. Yes, I will. Luffy, Hancock, Yamato, and Robin stepped out onto the deck, excitement buzzing in the air. Luffy announced to the crew, everyone, Nico Robin is joining us. Alvida, Kobe, Usopp, Nami, Pudding, and Kaya welcomed her warmly, their faces lighting up with smiles. Zoro and Kuro gave her a simple nod of acknowledgement, while Sanji, drawn in by romance, was about to go into his usual perverse mode, but Pudding swiftly whacked him on the head with a frying pan, silencing him. Vivi, however, had hesitations. She approached Luffy, concern etched across her features. Is this really a good idea? Luffy, sensing her concern, explained, Robin has a troubled past, but she's not our enemy. She's been through enough. Robin stepped forward, her voice soothing as she addressed the princess. I assure you, I am not a threat. I wasn't planning to go along with Crocodile's schemes. Vivi looked intrigued yet wary. What is he planning? With gravity in her tone, Robin recounted Crocodile's plans, how he initiated a civil war, intended to overthrow King Cobra, and his ultimate goal, acquiring the poneglyph hidden within the palace's crypts. Vivi's expression darkened with determined anger at the mention of Crocodile's name. In a flash, she transformed into her hybrid fox form, her golden fur bristling with anger as sand began to swirl around her in a tempest. It caught Robin by surprise. Since when do you have a devil fruit? She asked in disbelief. Luffy grinned. I gave it to her yesterday. Vivi's rage swirled, but Luffy quickly interjected, calm down. You will destroy the whole ship like that. Snapping out of her fury, Vivi realized her power was getting out of control. Oh, sorry, Luffy. She said sheepishly, her ears flattening slightly. Turning to Robin, Luffy explained, I need your help in convincing Mr. 5, Ms. Valentine, and Mr. 13 to switch sides. We need them for something I'm planning. Robin nodded with confidence. No problem. I can reach out to them, it shouldn't be a problem. Robin then asked, where is Ms. Friday? Luffy, Hancock, Yamato, and Vivi exchanged guilty glances. Oh, that vulture. We kind of ate her, Vivi admitted, a bit embarrassed by the admission. Robin's eyes widened in surprise. You ate her. Pudding, trying to lighten the mood, chimed in, well, she did try to peck me first. As Yamato and Zoro brought Mr. 5, Ms. Valentine, and Mr. 13 onto the deck, the three looked visibly frightened. Their anxiety intensified at the sight of Ms. All Sunday, or Nico Robin. Luffy stepped forward, his demeanor confident. So, let's get down to business. Please, let us go, Ms. Valentine pleaded. We didn't know a pirate with a bounty of 700 million berry would be here. We were just on a mission to eliminate the princess. Mr. 5 chimed in, Ms. Valentine, we're dead anyway. Now we know the boss's true identity. Luffy smiled, a playful glint in his eyes. Or you could work for me. They cautiously raised their heads, intrigued by this unexpected proposition. That's right, Luffy continued, Ms. All Sunday, or Nico Robin has joined my crew, and you three are welcome too. Robin told me you're capable people, and it would be a waste to kill you. What's the catch? Mr. 5 asked, suspicion etched on his face. Luffy shrugged casually. No catch. Just this. I plan to start a black market operation, and I need capable people to run it. Accept, and you'll be spared and rich beyond your wildest dreams. Refuse, and I will personally send you gift wrapped to your boss, Crocodile. Robin chimed in, her voice steady and reassuring. Listen, you three. I recruited you, not Crocodile. Once he finds no use for you, he will kill you or find someone to do it. So, I suggest accepting the offer, Gem and Makita. Gem and Makita looked at each other, weighing their options. Finally, Gem spoke, okay, I accept. Makita nodded in agreement. So do I. Mr. 13 hesitated but then nodded as well, driven by the inevitability of their situation. Kaya, watching the interaction, felt a mix of sympathy and amusement, finding the little otter surprisingly cute. Luffy smiled, okay, Gem, Makita, and you too, 13, welcome pirates. Makita then added, oh, one more thing. My best friend, Marianne, or M's Golden Week, were like sisters. Can she join as well? Luffy replied enthusiastically, no problem. I plan to recruit all of Crocodile's agents, from 5 to 1, and their partners. Good. You should definitely recruit Mr. 3. Gem suggested. Robin added, oh, Goldano. Yes, he has a useful devil fruit and he's clever. He and Rybrian are on our next island, Little Garden. Excellent. Once I recruit all of Crocodile's top agents, I will tell you my plans, Luffy declared, and the three nodded with enthusiasm. However, feeling a little embarrassed, Luffy sheepishly mentioned, "Oh, and we kind of ate Ms. Friday. Sorry." 13, hearing this revelation, burst into cartoonish tears, forgetting his earlier bravado. Out of nowhere, he started placing a makeshift shrine with Ms. Friday's picture on it, praying earnestly. "Come on, don't be a drama llama," Luffy said, rolling his eyes slightly. Kaya stepped over to comfort 13, saying, "Oh, don't cry. I can be your friend." Seeing Kaya's kind gesture, 13 managed a small smile. "Hey Kaya, are you sure?" Usopp asked casually. "Yes, I am. I like this little guy," Kaya replied, picking up 13 and placing him on her shoulder. Later that evening, during dinner, the Shadow Dragon pirates gathered around the table, sharing tales of their day. Robin and Makita, both having endured their first grueling hockey training session with Yamato, were feeling the strain of the tough regimen. Yamato, showing no mercy, had pushed them to their limits. Meanwhile, Mr. 13, now affectionately named Ollie by Kaya, was eating beside his new caretaker, enjoying his meal. Gem, having misbehaved during training by flicking a booger at Yamato, a gesture both disrespectful and gross, found himself assigned to 3 days of kitchen duties as punishment. In the kitchen, he aided Sanji and Pudding, reflecting on the lesson learned. Across the table, Usopp struck up a conversation with Robin and Makita. "Wow, Robin, do you really have a bounty of 79 million berry?" Robin nodded, acknowledging the truth of his words. Usopp continued, "That would make you the third highest bounty in the crew." Hancock, overhearing the exchange, spoke up with a slight smile, "Actually, she has the fourth highest bounty." "Yamato, you didn't tell them, did you?" Yamato chuckled, "Oops, I forgot." She reached into her kimono and pulled out her wanted poster. It depicted her image with the words "Oni Princess Yamato, wanted dead or alive, 250 million berry." Usopp's eyes widened in shock, but Kaya asked curiously, "Since when do you have a bounty?" Yamato explained, "Well, it's a long story. I've known these two," pointing at Luffy and Hancock, "and Luffy's brother Ace for a while. They helped me escape Wano, and since Kaido is my dad, it was only a matter of time before this happened." Kaya, intrigued by the mention of Ace, asked, "Who is Ace?" Luffy smiled, pride evident in his voice. "Fire Fist Ace, the commander of Whitebeard's 2nd Division. Bounty, 1 billion berry. And he's my older brother." Hancock added, "Yes, Ace, Luffy, and I grew up together. I consider him an older brother." Seeing the crew's astonished expressions, Luffy decided to share more. "Oh, I forgot to tell you about our allies." Nami teased, "Who, Buggy?" Luffy shook his head, "No, our other allies that will officially be known once we make Alabasta our territory. They are Whitebeard, red-haired Shanks, the Revolutionary Army, the Giants of Elbaf, the Shandorians, and the Kuja Pirates." Hearing this, jaws dropped around the table. The idea of being in alliance with not just 2 emperors, but also the legendary Giants, the all-female Kuja Pirates, and others was mind-blowing. Curious, Kuro asked, "And who are the Shandorians?" Hancock explained, "They live on Sky Island. After Alabasta, we can take a week's vacation up there. Who knows, maybe we can visit Amazon Lily soon as well." At the mention of Amazon Lily, Sanji's eyes lit up with stars. He began bowing and kissing Hancock's feet. "Thank you, Hancock. Thank you. I will visit paradise." Just as he said that, Pudding, ever watchful, smacked him on the head with a frying pan again, leaving a dent. "Pervert," she chided. Luffy approached Sanji and warned, "Sanji, you've got to get your affections towards girls under control, or else." Sanji, slightly scared, asked, "Or else what?" With a serious tone, Luffy replied, "Or else, while we visit Amazon Lily, you will go to Okama Island." "What's Okama Island?" Sanji asked, confused. Luffy leaned in and whispered the details, causing Sanji's face to turn pale. No, I'll behave, I promise. No more complimenting the ladies. I'm stone now. I'll be a monk. Just don't send me there." Sanji pleaded dramatically, his desperation clear to everyone around the table. Hancock, not passing up the opportunity to tease Luffy, turned to Sanji with a mischievous grin. "Oh, Don't worry, Sanji. Luffy won't go near Okama Island, although Ivankov was caught by the world government 3 years ago and locked and impelled down. Luffy is scared to death of him. Don't remind me, Luffy groaned, a shiver running down his spine. I still have nightmares thanks to him. Curious, Nami asked, why is Luffy so scared of Ivankov? Last I heard, he was with the Revolutionary Army. Hancock explained, oh, he is. But you see, Okama Island is a kind of hell for men, it's an island filled with drag queens. Luffy and Ace were brought there by Lilith, and there was a second time that. Please, don't tell them that. Luffy interjected, trying to forestall the embarrassing tale. Hancock chuckled and continued, during our training with Lilith, Luffy challenged Ivankov. Not only did he lose, but Ivankov, using his devil fruit powers, injected Luffy with estrogen and turned him into a girl for 3 days as punishment. Luffy slumped to the floor, thoroughly embarrassed. Please don't remind me. It's so humiliating. Hancock added with a teasing smile, oh, come on, you were cute as a girl. It was funny. The rest of the crew couldn't help but start laughing at the image, their amusement echoing across the deck. Luffy quickly shot up and declared, while I can't stop the girls from laughing, any guy who laughs will be tied up and brought to Okama Island immediately. Is that clear? The playful warning only added to the laughter, though the male crew members tried their best to suppress their chuckles. The camaraderie and jokes continued to flow, the crew's laughter serving as a reminder of their shared experiences and the bonds that held them together through thick and thin. The next day, as the Shadow Dragon pirates approached Little Garden, the crew prepared for whatever awaited them on the mysterious island. Hancock, standing beside Luffy, watched the island grow larger on the horizon. With a yawn, she remarked, man, it's been ages since we had a good fight. Luffy turned to her with a knowing smile. I know, but you also know that we're overpowered here. Our crew, although they're getting stronger, are no match for us. Hancock nodded in agreement, a hint of frustration in her voice. I know, but ever since we started this trip, I feel useless. I need a good workout, Luffy. Luffy chuckled, appreciating her warrior spirit. Tell you what, once we recruit Mr. 3 and his partner, you and I can have a spar. Let the crew see our true power. Other than Yamato, none of them have seen us fight at 100%. Hancock's eyes lit up. Finally. To tell you the truth, I was getting tired of holding back. You may be my fiancé and my captain, but don't forget, I am still a Kuja warrior at heart. Luffy leaned in and kissed her, whispering, I know. Oh, by the way, I'm going to spar with Kobe. How about you warm up by fighting him instead? Hancock considered it and nodded. Okay, I guess, why not? Turning to the deck, Luffy called out, hey, Kobe. Get over here. Kobe approached quickly, eager and attentive. Yes, Captain. Luffy grinned at him. Kobe, today you'll get the chance to go all out. You're not fighting me, you're fighting Hancock. Oh, and she won't hold back like I do. Panic flashed in Kobe's eyes. What, are you sure? Nami, overhearing the conversation, shouted from the helm, we'll be at Little Garden in 10 minutes. Hancock reassured Kobe with a confident smile, oh, don't worry. This will take 2 minutes at most. Kobe steeled himself, accepting the challenge despite his nerves. On deck, the crew gathered around, eager to witness the spectacle. It was a chance to see one of their strongest in action, pushing Kobe to his limits and giving everyone a glimpse into the incredible strength that had helped guide them on their journey. Luffy gathered the crew, excitement bubbling through the air. Today, you're in for a show. First, Hancock will fight against Kobe. And then, once we finish our business in Little Garden, Hancock and I will have a battle so you all can see our full power. The announcement shocked everyone, especially Yamato and Pudding. Are you sure? Yamato asked, concern threading her voice. You could destroy the whole island if you two go all out. Hancock waved off the worry with a confident smile. Oh, don't worry. Plus, I can tell everyone here is curious about our true strength. And Yamato, Pudding, you too, no spoilers. Is that clear? With a sigh, Yamato relented. Okay, but Hancock, don't hurt poor Kobe too badly. He's just a kid. Luffy reassured, don't worry, she won't kill him. Besides, I want to see if he has it, like us 3. Hancock turned to Kobe, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the upcoming fight. Looks like we're about to find out. Ready, Kobe. Ready, ma'am. Kobe nodded, determination in his stance as the deck cleared for the spar. As the crew prepared for the match, Sanji leaned over to Pudding, whispering, "Pudding-chan, does Kobe have a chance?" Pudding shook her head. "No, believe me. You've seen what Hancock can transform into, but that's just the tip of the iceberg." Hancock's ears perked up at that. "Hey, no spoilers." Pudding quickly corrected herself, nodding fearfully. "Yes, ma'am." Kobe, filled with resolve, spoke to himself, "Right, this is a true test. Let's see if I am worthy of being called Luffy's apprentice." With determination in his eyes, he shouted, "Gum Gum Pistol," launching a punch directly at Hancock. However, she caught it effortlessly, her grip steady and unyielding. "Is that all?" Hancock asked coolly, as she effortlessly redirected his attack. Not deterred, Kobe quickly shifted tactics. Using his leg, he shouted, "Gum Gum Whip," and swung a kick towards her. Hancock dodged it with ease, releasing his arm as she gracefully stepped aside. "Not bad, but let's kick it up a notch," she said as she transformed into her Gorgon form, towering over Kobe with an intimidating presence. "Let's see how you deal with this attack, Fang of the Gorgon." With a powerful lunge, she attacked Kobe, who narrowly dodged it at the last second. Her bite sunk into the deck, and the area she bit suddenly turned to stone. "What is that?" Kobe exclaimed in shock. "Oh," Hancock replied casually, "besides my looks that can turn people to stone, I also have venom. If bitten by me, my venom can turn you into a statue as well. Not only are my fangs venomous, but my claws and my hair snakes possess the same venom." Hearing this, the rest of the crew were taken aback, while poor Kobe felt a wave of terror wash over him. Nami whispered to Kaya, "Man, she's a killing machine." Kaya nodded in agreement. "Don't forget, she's mastered 3 types of haki as well." Refusing to back down, Kobe gathered his strength. "Okay, take this, gear second." Kobe's speed dramatically increased, and in a flash, he disappeared, reappearing behind Hancock to land a punch on her back. Yet, her armament haki protected her, leaving her unscathed. "Is that all?" Hancock asked, turning to face him, unfazed. In one swift motion, Hancock used her tail to wrap around Kobe. He struggled to break free but couldn't. As she approached him, her fangs glistening with venom, and her eyes fixed on his, it seemed like the end might be near. Yamato, concerned, seemed ready to intervene, but Luffy gestured for her to wait, anticipating something more. Despite feeling cornered, Kobe felt something stir within him, a power he hadn't fully tapped into before. "I'm not done yet," he shouted, releasing a small burst of Conqueror's haki. The unexpected surge of power momentarily distracted Hancock. Taking advantage of the opening, Kobe launched a punch, catching Hancock by surprise and freeing himself from her grasp. Hancock wiped her lip where Kobe had landed a punch and noticed the small trace of blood. Her demeanor shifted as she transformed back into her human form. Approaching Kobe with a smile, she surprised him by hugging him tightly and giving him a small kiss on the cheek. "You did it, Kobe. You unlocked Conqueror's haki." Kobe, caught off guard and blushing furiously, stammered, "What? That was Conqueror's haki." Luffy nodded with enthusiasm. "Yep, you did it. Sorry Hancock had to scare you like that, but it was worth it." Hancock added, her tone a mix of pride and amusement, "Yes, and good punch, by the way. It's been some time since someone hit me like that." Just then, Alvida shouted from the helm, "Little garden ahead." Luffy clapped his hands together, a grin spreading across his face. "Okay, let's find a place to dock." As they entered Little Garden by River, the crew marveled at the lush jungle scenery that surrounded them. The island felt alive, a vibrant jungle that seemed almost prehistoric. Luffy turned to Robin, Jem, and Makita, eager for more information about this mysterious place. "What do you know about this island?" Luffy asked. Robin stepped forward, her eyes glinting with knowledge. "This is a prehistoric island that seems to be stuck in the age of dinosaurs. Mr. 3 sent some reports saying that there are dinosaurs here, but also 2 giants." "Really? 2 giants?" Luffy exclaimed, his excitement palpable. Hancock, intrigued, added, "Luffy, is it possible it's those 2 we heard about on Elbaf?" Luffy's brow furrowed in thought. "Dory and Brigitte. It could be a possibility. Haruden told us they've been fighting on some island for over 100 years. If we find them, we should tell them to return to Elbaf somehow. As the ship transitioned from the open sea to a winding river, the jungle of Little Garden revealed itself in all its lush glory. The scent of the wild filled the air, invigorating the crew, especially the zone devil fruit users like Yamato, Nami and Vivi, who felt their instincts stirring. Nami, her aunt, exclaimed, "What's happening? I feel like I just want to jump off the ship and chase something." Vivi echoed her sentiment, "Me too." Luffy smiled knowingly. "Easy, it's your predatory instincts kicking in. Hancock, Yamato and I feel it as well." Just then, as they glided along the river, a large tiger emerged from the jungle. Usopp panicked, shouting, "Tiger!" Kaya, her eyes filled with astonishment, observed, "Wow, it's the size of a rhinoceros." However, to their shock, the tiger suddenly fell over and died. "Well, that was unexpected," Luffy remarked, trying to process the turn of events. Robin speculated, "I guess it lost a fight with a stronger animal." Luffy nodded. "Yeah, so hey, Alvida, steer the ship over there. We can dock." Alvida complied and expertly maneuvered the ship to the designated spot along the riverbank. Once they docked, Luffy gathered the crew and laid out the plan. "Okay, here's the deal. Me, Hancock, Yamato, Vivi, Robin, Makita, and Jem will go find this Mr. 3 and his partner. Oh, Sanji, by the way, how are we on food?" Sanji looked a bit concerned. "Not great, to be honest. It should last until Alabasta, but if we have to make a detour, we might be in trouble." Luffy clapped his hands, formulating the next steps. "Okay, then. Sanji, you, Kuro, Zoro, Kaya, Nami, and Alvida will go hunting while Kobe, Pudding, and Usopp can guard the ship. Robin mentioned dinosaurs being here, so you can be the first cook to try and prepare dinosaur meat." "Okay, no problem. I'll probably bag the biggest one," Sanji boasted, grinning at the thought. Zoro, with a smirk, called out, "You. A pervy cook like you, don't make me laugh." Kuro chimed in, "Oh, come on. With my intelligence, I'll bag the biggest one." Kaya joined in with determination, "No, I will win with my devil fruit." Hearing the rising excitement, Luffy smiled widely. "Oh, how about this, we make this into a hunting competition. The winner gets 10 million berry as a prize." As soon as Luffy said those words, Nami, riding Richie the lion, jumped off the ship and onto the shore. "That money is mine. See you, losers," she shouted with a competitive gleam in her eyes. Zoro chuckled, grinning. Greedy witch. As the hunting party charged into the jungle, driven by competition and enthusiasm, Luffy watched with amusement. Man, they're sure eager to beat each other, especially Kaya. Who would have thought the shy girl I recruited would turn out like this? Oh well, he mused quietly to himself. Turning to his group, Luffy asked, "Ready?" Hancock, Yamato, Robin, Makita, Jem, and Vivi, riding on Karoo, nodded in agreement, and the group ventured into the dense jungle, leaving only Usopp, Kobe, and Pudding on the ship. "Alright, how about I make us some hot chocolate and scones?" Pudding suggested. "Yes, please," Usopp and Kobe chorused, eager for a treat. As Pudding brought out the snacks, the three settled comfortably on the deck, enjoying the serene day and delightful treats. "These are delicious," Pudding, Kobe complimented, savoring the taste. "Yeah, they hit the spot," Usopp agreed, causing Pudding to blush bashfully. "Oh, stop it, you two." The peaceful moment was interrupted by a rustling sound in the bushes nearby. Alerted, Usopp grabbed his rifle, ready for whatever might emerge. As the noise drew closer, he prepared to fire, but to their surprise, a massive head popped out from the trees. Usopp, Kobe, and Pudding stood frozen in shock as the giant laughed heartily, "Gabba baba." The giant leaned in closer, amused by their pale expressions. "Oh, little ones, do you have any alcohol by chance?" Though still trembling, Pudding managed to respond, "We do, but it's not for drinking. We use it for cooking or for disinfection." Usopp whispered urgently, "What about Zoro's private stash of sake and Luffy's collection of rare rum?" Kobe responded in a panic, "Are you crazy? Those two would kill us for that." Usopp retorted, also panicking, "Well, better that than upsetting this big guy." As they argued, hoping to avoid provoking the giant, the situation suddenly escalated. The giant screamed, turning abruptly as a T-Rex lunged out, biting his behind. With swift precision, he grabbed his axe and decapitated the dinosaur in one mighty swing. Triumphantly, he held the T-Rex's head aloft and shouted, "I am Bragi, Elbaf's greatest warrior." Facing Bragi's impressive display, Usopp, Kobe, and Pudding were struck with fear, unable to look away. Overwhelmed, Usopp fainted dramatically, leaving Kobe and Pudding to process the unexpected encounter with the legendary giant. Meanwhile, deep in the jungle, Luffy and his group, comprising Hancock, Yamato, Robin, Gem, Mikita, Vivi, and Karoo, moved cautiously. Robin spoke up, "I believe Mr. 3 and his partner should be around here somewhere." Luffy nodded, eager to complete their task. "Excellent. The sooner we handle this, the better." As they walked, the sound of commotion caught their attention, clearly caused by the members of the hunting party. Suddenly, Zoro came flying out of a bush. As he picked himself up, he cursed, "You damn witch, this is cheating." Luffy and his group watched in amusement as Nami, in her panther hybrid form and riding Richie, appeared. Kaya, her hands crackling with lightning from her devil fruit powers, was alongside her, as was Alvida, who had her mace covered in armament hockey. "Oh, it's not cheating," Nami declared confidently. "We simply teamed up together. We girls stick together," she said, glancing at Kaya and Alvida, who nodded in agreement. "So beat it, Moss Head." Luffy smiled, pleased to see their teamwork. He leaned over to Yamato and whispered, "Keep an eye on them so they don't take it too far." Just then, Kuro leapt from the bushes, his cat claw blades glinting with armament hockey. Adjusting his glasses, he addressed Zoro, "Truce." Zoro nodded. "Truce." The two then charged at the girls in playful rivalry. With Yamato staying back as a referee, Luffy's group continued on their way. As they walked, Hancock remarked, "They're certainly getting stronger." "Yeah, did you notice Nami's claws?" Luffy replied. Hancock nodded, "Yes, she has them covered in armament as well." Gem, watching the interactions in admiration, spoke up. "Captain, your crew is getting stronger and stronger, which is why Mikita and I have a request." Mikita added, "Yeah, we've been thinking. We know you want us to stay in Alabasta for the operation, but we've decided, we want to join you guys on the ship." Luffy, a bit surprised, asked, "Really? Are you sure?" Gem nodded confidently. "We are, if you'll have us." Luffy smiled broadly. "Okay, you two are welcome. I think the other agents will suffice for the operation we're planning." Vivi, listening to the exchange, spoke up, "Luffy, I know we have a deal, but can you guarantee that this agreement won't make the world government target Alabasta?" Luffy turned to her reassuringly. "Don't worry, princess. Once I make Alabasta my territory, you and your father will be under my protection, and my allies' protection as well." Vivi nodded, though concern lingered. "But," she asked, "we never discussed the details of this agreement." Hancock intervened with a smile, "Oh, it's nothing big. We've heard that Crocodile has a casino in Alabasta. We want it to be our center of operations." Vivi nodded, understanding their intentions. "Okay. Just please keep my father and my people safe." Luffy grinned confidently. "No problem. And don't worry about Crocodile, I can handle him." As the group ventured deeper into the jungle, Luffy caught an unmistakable scent, food. Following the aroma, they stumbled upon an intriguing scene. Sanji, in the process of roasting a T-Rex, was accompanied by a giant and a young girl along with a man whose hair was shaped like the number 3, looking rather beaten up. Noticing them, Sanji called out, "Luffy, Hancock, Robin-chan, Mikita Swan, Vivi-chan. There you are." Gem scoffed playfully, "Hey, what about me?" The giant greeted them with a hearty voice, "So, Sanji, these." Angie nodded. "Yep, Dory, that's them." Hancock approached with curiosity. "Sanji, what happened here?" "Oh, nothing much," Sanji shrugged. "This idiot attacked me with his devil fruit powers, so I had to put him in his place. Then I explained to his partner that Robin, Mikita, and the boom guy are with us." Gem, annoyed, corrected Sanji. "It's Gem, you pervy cook." Luffy stepped forward and surveyed the scene, noticing Mr. 3, who sat there looking worse for wear, along with his partner, Ms. Golden Week, who was calmly sipping tea. Mikita's face lit up with joy. "Marianne. It's me." Marianne smiled warmly. "Big sis, it's you," she exclaimed, waving. Sanji already told us about Luffy's proposition, and I accept, Marianne said cheerfully. Galdino, still nursing his sore head, groaned, I told this guy the first accept as well. Ow. Luffy spoke, welcome, Galdino and Marianne. He then remembered something Robin had mentioned. Oh, I forgot. Robin told me you four have bounties as well. Quote. Nikita was the first to speak up. Yes, we have bounties. Mine is 7,500,000. Jem followed, 10 million. Galdino added, 24 million. And finally, Marianne stated, 29 million. Luffy and Hancock exchanged looks of surprise, their eyes widening at Marianne's mention. What? How does a little squirt like you have such a high bounty? They blurted out in unison. Marianne grinned mischievously, clearly enjoying the astonishment. Let's just say I have my ways, she winked, her unique talents now a subject of admiration and curiosity among the crew. With Galdino and Marianne joining their ranks, Luffy's crew felt stronger and more resourceful than ever. Surrounded by allies old and new, they continued to prepare for the challenges ahead, their spirits as high as the aroma of Sanji's cooking wafting through the air. With the introductions complete, Sanji announced proudly, all right, everyone. The food is ready. The crew dug into the feast he had prepared, the delicious aroma filling the air. As they ate, Luffy struck up a conversation with Dory. Hey, Dory, Luffy said between bites. How are things going with you and Bragi? Dory grinned, happy to share a moment with his friend. Oh, you know, keeping busy. We've been having some good fights. As they chatted, Dory offered them some special barrels he had received from Bragi earlier. He tossed a barrel of rum toward the group, encouraging them to enjoy it. Curious, Luffy opened the barrel and took a swig of the rum. A familiar flavor washed over his taste buds, prompting him to take another taste. Realization hit him suddenly. Hey, Dory, he asked, looking at the giant. Where did your friend get this rum? Dory smiled knowingly. Bragi was given this and some sake by his friends, the three-eyed girl, the boy with pink hair and glasses, and the long-nosed rifleman. Luffy's expression shifted to an evil smirk as he processed the information. Oh, really? How generous of them. Hancock, noticing Luffy's sudden change in demeanor, approached him, puzzled. What's the commotion about? Luffy simply instructed her, look in the barrel. She peered inside and saw the rum. Wait, don't tell me, she started to realize the implications. Luffy nodded, biting back his anger. Yes, those soon-to-be corpses mixed and gave away all of my rum. Each bottle was over 250,000 berry. Oh, and they gave away Zoro's sake as well. I can't wait to tell him. Hancock sighed, understanding the brewing storm. Oh well, looks like we will need a new sniper, cabin boy, and pastry chef. Luffy, shaking his head with annoyance, replied, oh no, I'm not going to make it that easy. I'm going to find Zoro, and we are going to pay them a visit. Dory, initially surprised, couldn't help but laugh at Luffy's determination. Sounds like some fun is about to happen. The crew exchanged amused glances, knowing that Luffy's confrontations typically led to chaotic adventures. With their spirits high and anticipation in the air, they finished their meal, gearing up for whatever may come next, including a potential payback on their troublesome allies. After the feast to welcome Galdino and Marianne to the crew, Luffy addressed the group. Alright, now that the introductions are done, Galdino, you'll head to Alabasta separately. I have a specific job for you there. Galdino nodded in understanding. Turning to Marianne, Luffy noticed her eagerness to stay with Nikita. Marianne, I can see you want to be with Nikita, so how about I offer you the position as the ship's artist? With a big smile, Marianne accepted happily. I accept. Luffy nodded, pleased. Then he turned to the giant Dory. Dory, your duel is over. You and Brigitte need to return to Elbaf immediately. Dory was taken aback, both confused and a bit annoyed. What? Luffy continued, according to Elbaf's laws, even though you two are in a duel, you and Brigitte must return to Elbaf and swear your allegiance to your new king, Haruden, the son of King Harold. Though annoyed, Dory understood the importance of the Elbaf laws. Loyalty to the king was paramount for a warrior, otherwise, they'd be cast out. Fine, little one, but I have a request. I want to duel Bragi one more time. Luffy smiled at the prospect. How about this, you two duel me and Hancock. Hancock, Her eyes lighting up at the prospect of action, interjected, finally, some excitement. But Luffy, didn't you say we'd fight each other? Luffy grinned at her. I did, but this sounds more fun. Dory, agreeing, nodded. Alright, let's go to Brigi and tell him. He's on the other side of the island. Before heading out, Robin approached Galdino. Do you still have your Den Den Mushi? She asked. Galdino confirmed and handed the device to Robin. She dialed a number, and soon enough, a familiar voice answered. Ah, Ms. All Sunday, there you are. Robin's smile turned sinister as she replied, Mr. Zero, I have news for you. Crocodile's voice came through, curious but cautious. Is the princess dead? Robin, holding nothing back, responded, no, she's here with me, along with Mr. 5, Ms. Valentine, Mr. 3, and Ms. Goldenweek. Oh, and we quit, Crocodile. We've got a better offer. Crocodile's tone shifted to one of anger and disbelief. What is this, some kind of joke? You've revealed my identity. Nico Robin, you 5 are dead. Amidst the rising tension, a new voice entered the call, one that Crocodile instantly recognized. Luffy's voice was confident and taunting. Hello, Croco. Long time no see. In a sudden shift from anger to panic, Crocodile's voice filled the line, Shadow Dragon. Luffy smiled, his tone mockingly light. Ah, you remember me. How nice. Crocodile, his voice laced with anger, retorted, what are you up to, Shadow Dragon? You and that witch of yours. Luffy's expression shifted to one of cold seriousness at the insult directed at Hancock. Watch your tone, you sand coward. What are you up to? Crocodile demanded again, trying to maintain his composure. With an evil grin, Luffy replied, oh, nothing much. I plan to take Alabasta and kick your ass in the process. I have plans there. Crocodile, now both enraged and slightly fearful, blurted out, you're what? Yap, Luffy confirmed, relishing the reaction he was eliciting. I look forward to seeing you again, Croco D. Isla. And with that, he hung up. Robin, Galdino, Jem, Makita, Marianne, and Vivi stared at Luffy in disbelief, having witnessed how his mere voice had shaken Crocodile. Robin, impressed but curious, asked, what did you call him? Luffy grinned at her, leaving an air of mystery. I'll tell you later. Meanwhile, back in his office in Alabasta, Crocodile was initially panicked but quickly composed himself. Muttering to himself, he said, that brat, he'll ruin everything. I must get Nico Robin back, she's the key to my plans. Smiling with an evil smirk, Crocodile realized his next move. Looks like I'll have to use my status as a warlord. He picked up another Den Den Mushi and, once connected, spoke assertively into the receiver, Marine HQ, this is Sir Crocodile. I request the help of an admiral. The voice on the other end replied, Sir Crocodile, may I know the reason? Crocodile explained, yes, the Shadow Dragon and the Snake Princess are coming to Alabasta. Understood. Admiral Akainu will be sent, the dispatcher confirmed. Crocodile's sinister smile widened as he muttered to himself, perfect. Back on Little Garden, Luffy turned around just in time to see Zoro and Kuro being thrown out of the jungle. They both landed heavily on the ground, looking beaten, electrified, and with claw marks marring their bodies. Zoro pushed himself up weakly, glaring at Sanji as he managed to catch his breath. You pervy cook, why didn't you help us against those 3? Now thanks to you, we lost to them and that gigantic cat. Just then, Nami emerged from the bushes, followed closely by Alvida, Kaya, and Yamato. Nami smirked confidently, looks like Alvida, Kaya, and I won the hunting competition. Kuro, defeated and hurt, addressed Sanji with disdain. You'll regret this, cook. Sanji dismissed their threats with a casual wave. Oh, I am so scared. What can a moss-head swordsman in a tacky suit wearing cat do to me? Plus, a gentleman always lets a lady win. Zoro and Kuro, beaten and weak, raised their weapons in protest, but Luffy quickly intervened, sensing the tension. All right, stop. Let me introduce our new crewmates. He gestured to Galdino and Marianne. He introduced them to Zoro, Kuro, Nami, Alvida, Yamato, Kaya, and Nami's pet lion, Richie. The group welcomed them with varying degrees of enthusiasm, but their biggest surprise came when they saw Mr. 13 on Kaya's shoulder. They found it amusing that she named him Ollie. After introductions, Luffy approached Zoro with a serious expression. "Hey, Zoro, I need to tell you what Kobe, Usopp, and Pudding did." Hearing Luffy that his private stash of sake was gone, Zoro froze, his mind racing. "How much did they give away?" he asked with a shaky voice. Luffy met his gaze directly, the weight of his answer evident. "All of it." Suddenly, Zoro exploded with fury, his aura radiating pure rage. He looked at Luffy, barely containing himself. "Shall we?" Luffy nodded firmly. "Let's get them." "Hey, don't hurt Pudding, you moss head." Sanji protested, but Zoro was already in berserker mode. "No one gives away my sake," Zoro shouted, igniting the tension as he prepared to take action. On the other side of the island, Usopp, Kobe, and Pudding were enjoying their time with Bragi despite the rocky start to their day. The giant greeted them with a booming laugh. "Dory, there you are. And I see you brought company, I imagine they are friends of these three." Turning around, Usopp, Kobe, and Pudding were ready to welcome their friend, but their joy quickly transformed into sheer terror when they saw Luffy in his hybrid dragon form, wielding his two swords, Shadow Slicer and Day Slicer, and Zoro, who had his three katanas out and ready for blood. Both released an intense aura of rage. Panicking, Kobe looked at Pudding, who nodded in fear. The two fell to their knees and cried out, "It was Usopp's fault. He made us do it." They pointed accusingly at Usopp. Usopp, sweating profusely, shouted back at them, "Traitors." The scene was chaotic, Usopp screaming as Luffy and Zoro advanced, clearly ready to beat him up for the trouble he'd caused. Once they reached Usopp, they started to punish him. After the chaos, Usopp lay on the ground with 7 steaming lumps on his head, while Luffy scolded him ferociously. "I think I made a mistake," Usopp thought to himself, wincing at Luffy's words. "You will clean the whole ship with a toothbrush. Is that clear?" Luffy declared. He then turned to Kobe and Pudding. "Don't think you two are off the hook for not stepping in and snitching on Usopp. You two are on night patrol for a week, and your training will increase 2 times as well." Kobe and Pudding sighed, accepting their punishment. Meanwhile, Sanji, having overheard the situation, fell into his pervy mood, propping up a flirtatious tone. "Don't worry, Pudding-chan. I'll cover your shifts in the reprimand over." Luffy and Dory explained to Bragi that the two giants needed to return to Elbaf. Bragi, though hesitant, nodded in confirmation. "So, you two little ones are going to duel me and Dory?" he asked, eyebrow raised. Hancock interjected, "No, just me." Luffy protested with a grin, "Hey, that's not fair. We said we would share." Hancock smiled sweetly, leaning in to kiss Luffy. "Sorry, honey, but it's time to showcase my true power." Luffy nodded, some the shadow void he used to store treasure. He pulled out 2 swords and tossed them to Hancock. "Here." She caught them expertly, a determined glint in her eyes. Nami, watching curiously, asked Luffy, "What is she doing?" "Oh, nothing," Luffy replied nonchalantly. "She's going into her beast mode." The rest of the crew gasped in shock at the implication. Nami exclaimed, "What? Isn't that what we saw before? Her beast form?" Luffy shook his head. "No, that's her hybrid form. Her beast form is much more terrifying." At that moment, Luffy noticed a red blister on Nami's neck. "What is that?" Nami replied, "Oh, just some bug that bit me a moment ago. It's nothing." Luffy turned back to Hancock, who nodded at him, ready to transform. She began her transformation, shifting into a gorgon. Her scales took on a bluish hue, her snake hair lengthened and became more elaborate, adorned with spikes growing along her back. Most shocking of all, an additional pair of arms sprouted, and 2 more faces appeared on either side of her head, giving her an even more formidable appearance. She grew to over 15 meters tall, now in her beast mode, wielding her 2 swords in one pair of hands and holding her bow and arrows in the other. Luffy presented her proudly, "Everybody, this is Hancock's beast form, the Gorgon Queen." The crew, along with Dory and Bragi, stood in stunned silence as Hancock transformed into her Gorgon beast form. Kuro spoke up first, bewildered. "Is it just me, or did her weapons grow with her?" Luffy nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, her bow and swords are a special make. Mom told me, and Hancock, that they can change size to benefit their bearer. It's a special Lunarian forge technique." "Lunarian?" Vivi questioned, curiosity piqued. I'll tell you later, Luffy replied, wanting to focus on the battle ahead. With a sinister tone, Hancock addressed Dory and Bragi. Ready. The two giants nodded in preparation. Without hesitation, Hancock fired an arrow from her bow. Dory blocked it with his shield, but as the arrow struck, he noticed a horrifying transformation. The shield began to turn to stone. Panic set in as he quickly discarded it. The shield shattered upon hitting the ground. As Dory was distracted, Hancock lunged at Bragi, aiming for his shield. When her swords met the shield, it began to turn to stone as well. Bragi, caught off guard, was momentarily dazed by the effect. Taking advantage of that moment, Hancock used her speed to move behind him, her arm covered in armament haki. She delivered a punch so powerful that it caused Bragi to jaw brace and lose several teeth, leaving him down and unconscious. Seeing this unfold, Dory charged forward, intent on avenging his friend. However, Hancock disappeared and reappeared behind him in an instant. She coated her entire snake tail in armament haki and smacked Dory on the head hard enough that he fell to the ground, defeated. The duel was over. Hancock had just defeated two giants with graceful ease. She turned back to her human form and declared triumphantly, "I win." Everyone, except for Luffy, Pudding and Yamato, looked on with eyes wide as dinner plates, shocked by what they had just witnessed. "Congratulations, honey," Luffy proclaimed with a proud smile, excitement bubbling in his chest for what Hancock had achieved. Later that day, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, the Shadow Dragon pirates, along with Dory and Bragi, were enjoying themselves after a lively celebration. Kaya had patched up Dory and Bragi, while Usopp was scolded vigorously during the process. Hearing Kaya's reprimands was more painful for him than any beating from Luffy or Zoro, making the experience especially tormenting. The party lasted deep into the night, filled with laughter and camaraderie, until they settled down for rest. The following morning, the crew geared up to leave Little Garden with Marianne as their newest addition. Luffy instructed Galdino, "Take this eternal pose to Alabasta. You're to go to King Cobra's palace and protect the king in case Crocodile tries something. Also, lure out all the undercover Baroque agents in the palace." Galdino nodded, understanding the expectations laid before him. The crew left Little Garden, but not without encountering a large golden fish that popped up unexpectedly. Luffy, Hancock, and Yamato combined their conqueror's haki and easily shooed the massive creature away as if it were a small fish. Later that day, Luffy reclined in a lounge chair, enjoying his favorite activity, laying in the sun. He watched Usopp, who was still cleaning the deck with a toothbrush as punishment. Pulling down his sunglasses, Luffy called out, "You missed a spot, Usopp." In tears, Usopp begged, "Please, Luffy, have mercy. I didn't mean to." Luffy smirked playfully, "Didn't mean what?" "To destroy my collection of rare rum. You caused over 3 million berry worth of damage when you mixed it all in a barrel." Usopp, now on the verge of breaking down, pleaded, "I'll pay you back, I swear." Luffy paused momentarily, considering his response. "Fine. The next time we find treasure, I'll deduct over 7 million berry from you. That's 3 million for the rum and 4 million for going into my and Hancock's quarters without permission." "Okay, anything is better than this," Usopp cried, tears flowing freely as he realized the full weight of his mistakes. Luffy grinned mischievously. "You'll regret that remark, Usopp. The fact I plan to release you from your punishment in an hour makes this all the more funny." As Luffy got up from his lounge chair, Kaya rushed toward him in a panic. "Luffy, it's Nami. Something is wrong, she's sick." Hearing the urgency in her voice, Luffy immediately replied, "What? What is it?" Kaya, visibly distressed, exclaimed, "I don't know. She has a high fever." Without hesitation, Luffy and Usopp rushed to the women's quarters. Upon arriving, they saw Hancock, Richie, and Alvida gathered around Nami, who was lying in bed, clearly suffering from a fever. "Hancock, what's going on?" Luffy asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. "We have a serious problem," Hancock said grimly, pointing to Nami's neck, which had developed a concerning purple mark. Kaya stepped forward, clutching a book in her hands. "It took me some time to find the cause. The bug that bit her is called Cestia. If she doesn't get help, she will die in 3 days." Hearing this chilling news, Luffy's expression shifted to shock. "This is serious." He turned to Alvida, determination in his eyes. Alvida, set a course for Drum Island now. Drum Island. But why? Alvida queried, confused by the sudden order. Luffy responded urgently, no time to explain. To make it short, Drum Kingdom has the best doctors in the world. Alvida, understanding the gravity of the situation, nodded and hurried to the helm to navigate the ship. Luffy approached the bedside, where Nami lay weak from the fever. Upon seeing him, she managed a small smile, though it was evident how much pain she was in. She tried to speak, but Luffy gently urged, "Just rest, Nami." He then turned to Richie. "Watch over your mistress, okay? The rest of us will give her some space to sleep." Richie gave a growl of affirmation, settling down next to Nami protectively. As Luffy and Usopp stepped out, they were determined to do everything in their power to help Nami recover. With Drum Island on the horizon and urgent action needed, the Shadow Dragon pirates prepared for the next phase of their adventure, full of resolve to save their friend. Luffy approached the deck, his expression serious as he gathered the sea and life danger, and we have to change course. Vivi, understanding the urgency of the situation immediately, volunteered, "I'll stay by Nami's side." Kuro, furrowing his brow, asked Luffy, "How do you plan to get to Drum Island?" Luffy pulled out his log pose, a special log pose that revealed 3 locations. "We'll head to Drum Island," he stated, showing it to the crew. They nodded in understanding, ready to adapt to the sudden change. Later that night, Hancock made her way to the women's quarters. As she entered, she saw Vivi and Richie, who looked sad for Nami's condition, alongside Nami, who was suffering from a high fever. Hancock walked over to Vivi. "You should go to the kitchen and get something to eat," he nudged gently. Suddenly, Nami spoke weakly, trying to make her presence known. "Vivi." Hancock. "Save your strength, Nami," Hancock replied calmly. "You'll be okay soon." Nami shrugged it off, her determination shining through despite her weak state. "Hancock, open my drawer and get today's newspaper out." Hancock complied, rummaging through Nami's things until she found the newspaper and opened it. She gasped at the headline, "Civil War in Alabasta reaches a boiling point. Admiral Akainu sent by world government to stop the chaos." "Shit, this is serious," Hancock murmured, her expression turning grave. Vivi asked anxiously, "What is it?" Hancock replied, "Akainu is going there because of me and Luffy. He's a psychopath, and he will perform his version of justice, which means he'll kill all the rebels and anyone who stands in his way." Vivi felt panic rise in her chest, but Hancock quickly soothed her. "Don't worry, she and Luffy will handle that lava psycho. You should eat something." Hancock then turned to Richie, instructing him, "Go eat as well." Richie hesitated but then looked to Nami, who in a weak voice urged him, "Go with Vivi." Reluctantly, the lion let out a sad yawn and trotted off with Vivi, leaving Hancock and Nami alone. Sitting beside Nami, Hancock noticed that the sickly girl seemed to muster whatever strength she had left. "Hancock, I have something to tell you." Nami started, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, save your strength, Nami," Hancock interjected. But Nami pressed on, "I love you and Luffy, and I want to be with both of you." Hancock was taken aback, cheeks flushing with a deep shade of red at the unexpected confession. It was something she never anticipated and left her momentarily speechless. Nami, despite her condition, managed a small, hopeful smile. "I just thought you should know." Hancock's heart raced as she processed Nami's words, realizing the depth of her feelings. The Shadow Sorrow sailed quietly on the Grand Line. The atmosphere aboard was tense due to Nami's sickness. Luffy was now acting as the temporary navigator, thanks to his special log pose with 3 needles that allowed him to set a course to Drum Island to get help for Nami, who was dangerously ill. It looked like they were on the right track because Drum Island was a winter island, and the air was growing colder, with light snow beginning to fall. Jem was in the crow's nest, on lookout, when something caught his eye. At first, he thought he was hallucinating. He removed his sunglasses just in case and looked through the telescope again. He was right. To his surprise, a man was standing alone in the middle of the sea. He quickly picked up a Den Den Mushi, which was connected to the ship's helm, and called the crew. Alvida answered the call. "What is it, Jem?" she asked. Jem replied, "There's some guy standing in the middle of the sea." Hearing this, Alvida paused, considering the situation. "Are you sure, or are you seeing things?" "No, I see him plain as day, Jem confirmed. Alvida nodded. Got it, she said, ending the call. She then turned to Luffy. Captain, we've got a problem. She explained what Jem had seen. Luffy listened carefully, then nodded. Tread with caution, he said. He turned to Yamato. Tell the crew to be ready, just in case. As the ship approached the mysterious figure, suddenly, from beneath his feet, a massive ship rose out of the ocean. The Shadow Sorrow's crew made themselves ready. Zoro drew his 3 katana, his eyes narrowing as he prepared for battle. Kaya covered her arms in a crackling flash of lightning, channeling her devil fruit powers. Usopp readied his sniper rifle, eyes focused. Robin prepared to unleash her devil fruit abilities, while Yamato shifted into her hybrid form, muscles tense and ready for action. As the large ship surfaced, they saw several armed men on deck, and its flag was a Jolly Roger featuring a crown and a metallic jaw. It was clearly the emblem of a formidable crew. Suddenly, a loud voice boomed from the ship in a cocky tone. Did our jumbo underwater raid ship, the Titan Tyrant, scare you? Just then, Luffy, accompanied by Alvida, stepped onto the deck. Luffy looked at the massive ship and turned to Yamato. What's going on? Who is that? Yamato, unfazed, answered, it looks like some sort of ship planning to raid us. No need to worry. Luffy grinned and said to his crew, don't engage yet. I want to see who's leading that crew. Who's stupid enough to attack us? Yamato then asked, where is Hancock? Luffy replied, thanks to her devil fruit, she can't handle the cold too well. She's in the kitchen with Sanji, Pudding, and Salome. Suddenly, soldiers swarmed onto the deck of the Shadow Sorrow, pointing guns at the pirates. The crew remained calm. They knew full well that Luffy alone could take down each of them in a second. Luffy thought to himself, these fools are singing their own death song. Suddenly, a fat man decked out in metallic armor with a metallic jaw approached the ship. Luffy instantly thought, this must be their leader. The man held a sword in his hand, and with a devilish grin, he bit down on the blade and swallowed it. Luffy stared, intrigued. I see you're the leader. Nice bite. Or do you have some kind of devil fruit power? The man, speaking in a cocky tone, said, man, I'm feeling hungry. To the Shadow Dragon pirate's surprise, his mouth extended unnaturally as he bit into the ship's railing, beginning to eat it. Luffy, seeing this, shouted angrily, hey, Tubby, what are you doing? One soldier warned, don't move. Wapol is currently eating. Luffy had enough of the situation. He reached for his weapon, Shadow Slicer, and launched an air blade at the soldiers pointing guns at him, slicing them all in half with a single swift motion. Wapol, along with the 2 men flanking him, his right and left hand men, watched the scene unfold with shock. One of the men, sporting a mustache and an afro, exclaimed, what are you? But before he could finish, Usopp fired his rifle, hitting both him and the other man in the head, killing them on the spot. Seeing this, Wapol yelled in panic, Chess, Kuromarimo. But it was too late. Luffy then activated his devil fruit power, transforming into his full dragon form. Suddenly, the remaining soldiers were faced with a gigantic black dragon with massive wings that looked like it had emerged from a nightmare. Terrified, the soldiers dropped their guns and began jumping into the sea to escape, swimming for their lives. Wapol attempted to flee as well, but Robin deftly used her devil fruit power to sprout arms on him, detaining him. Wapol looked terrified as Luffy, in his dragon form, lowered his massive head toward him. In a deep, menacing tone, Luffy said, you will pay for damaging my ship, fat boy. Tell me why I shouldn't kill you on the spot. Vivi appeared on the deck and said, hey, what's all that noise? Nami is sleeping. She then saw the carnage on deck and Luffy in his dragon form. Seeing her, Luffy reverted back to his human form and explained, oh, nothing much. Some idiot was trying to eat our ship. How's Nami? Vivi replied, not good, Luffy. She finally fell asleep. Nikita and Marianne are with her, along with her lion, Richie. Vivi then noticed Wapol and exclaimed, hey, I know this guy. Luffy asked, you do? Vivi nodded, yes, this is Wapol, the former king of Drum Island. I heard he abdicated a few weeks ago when pirates attacked his kingdom. He turned tail and ran. Luffy grinned devilishly at Wapol, who was on the verge of a breakdown, and said, oh really? Good news, Tubby, you get to live. I bet your people will love to see their cowardly king when we get to Drum Island. You'll make a good bargaining chip." Hearing this, Wapol erupted into panic. He knew that if he returned to Drum Island as a prisoner, the people would want vengeance not only for his cowardice but also for his tyranny as king. He started to shout, "You can't do this. I am a king approved by the world government." But Luffy replied calmly, "Not my problem, Tubby." He then instructed Kuro, "Put a pair of seastone cuffs on him and lock him in the cells." Kuro nodded and asked, "Should I gift wrap him for Drum Island too?" Luffy smiled, "No need." He then turned to Alvida, Zoro, Yamato, and Gem, ordering them to search the ship. With that, Luffy headed to the kitchen to grab something to eat. In the kitchen, Hancock was deep in thought, reflecting on what Nami had told her about having a crush on both her and Luffy. She thought to herself, "This makes things complicated. Luffy and I have known each other since we were kids, and were engaged. And now this." She pondered the possibilities of the three of them being in a relationship together, considering how things might work. Lost in these thoughts, Hancock accidentally crushed her teacup in her hand. Seeing this, Sanji asked, "Hey, Hancock-chan, are you okay? You seem deep in thought." Hancock snapped out of her reverie, noticing the shattered cup, and replied in an embarrassed tone, "Oh, nothing, Sanji. Just thinking." Sanji probed, "Really? You've been awfully quiet since you left Nami Swan's side earlier today." Pudding, who was feeding Salome some raw meat in the corner, chimed in, "Yeah, Hancock, what's up? You seem lost in thought." Hancock, her face turning a shade of red from embarrassment, retorted, "Hey, none of your business. I'm simply worried for Nami, that's all." Pudding raised her hands in mock surrender and said, "Okay, okay." She turned to Salome and remarked, "Your mistress can be grumpy sometimes." Salome nodded. Just then, Luffy entered the kitchen. Sanji asked, "Hey, Luffy, what was all that noise about?" Luffy replied, "Oh, nothing much, just some cowardly king trying to eat our ship." Sanji laughed, "Oh, nothing much then." Seeing Luffy, Hancock thought, "I have to tell him about this, but not now. First, we need to focus on saving Nami. Then, this awkward conversation can happen. Person mind." As Luffy sat down to enjoy a delicious plate of meat, Zoro entered the room. "Luffy," Zoro began, "we found something interesting." Luffy, mid-bite, looked up. "What? Can't it wait until I've eaten?" Zoro spoke again quickly, "You'll want to see this. We found a group of doctors on that ship." Hearing the word, doctors, Luffy immediately jumped out of his chair. He rushed outside, accompanied by Hancock, onto the deck. There, he saw a group of doctors from Drum Island, who looked panicked. Alvida, Yamato, and Gem were guarding them fiercely. Luffy approached the group. One of the doctors quickly begged, "Please, don't hurt us. We were only with Wapol because." Luffy cut him off sharply. "Save it. We have a crew member who's really sick. If you're going to help, you'll do everything you can for her. Or else, understand." The lead doctor hesitated and then nodded hurriedly. "Yes, please don't kill us." Luffy turned to Kaya. "Kaya, take these doctors to Nami and tell them everything about her condition." "And Kaya," Luffy added, "if they try anything funny, fry them." Kaya nodded, understanding her captain's meaning. She pointed the doctors toward Nami's room. A few hours later, Luffy was in his quarters with Hancock when a knock sounded at the door. "Enter," Luffy called out. The door opened, and Kaya entered, accompanied by two doctors. One of the doctors spoke, "Her condition is now stable, but I'm afraid we can't save her." Luffy's eyes widened. "What? But," the doctor continued, "we can't save her, but I know someone who can. Dr. Kurha is the only doctor in the world who might save her. She's on Drum Island." Hearing the name, both Luffy and Hancock thought the same thing. Kurha. The name floated in their minds. Old Man Whitebeard had mentioned her during his time with the Rocks Pirates. She was one of the greatest doctors alive. It seemed impossible, she was ancient. If she was still alive, she'd be about 140 years old. But the doctor added, "Be warned, she's a wild card. A brilliant but unpredictable doctor. She's very sensitive about her age, she's 139 years old, and she hates being called old or a hag. From what I've heard, she was once the doctor of a pirate crew." Luffy's face lit up with realization. That's her. Kurha, the former doctor of the Rocks pirates. Holy shit. Luffy, now realizing the importance of the information he had just received about Kurha, instructed Kaya and the two doctors to go. He also told Kaya to find something for them to eat, they had earned it. After they left, Luffy returned to his desk and reached for a Den Den Mushi. Hancock recognized it immediately and said, "Are you calling Whitebeard?" Luffy nodded. "Yeah, since I know the old man, he could tell us some stuff about her. Plus, I need to tell him something important." Hancock raised an eyebrow. "Is it about Ace?" Luffy nodded again. "Yes. You remember, Mom described the devil fruit that Teach killed Thatch over. When she visited us, she'd probably known I'd looked it up in our devil fruit encyclopedia." Hancock's eyes widened. "That's why you've been looking in it for so long." "Exactly," Luffy replied. "Take a look. I circled it. It was hard to find, but what I discovered could be a big problem, really serious." Hancock opened the devil fruit encyclopedia and went to the page Luffy marked. She read aloud. "Yami Yami no Mi, a logia-type devil fruit that grants the user the power of darkness." She looked up at Luffy. "So, it kind of resembles your devil fruit." Luffy nodded. "Read the whole page," he urged. Hancock continued reading. "Can create a black hole. It can nullify other devil fruit powers. It can also absorb devil fruit abilities from other users by killing them." She paused, her face serious. "Shit, this is serious." Luffy agreed, "It is." Despite being an excellent swordsman and hockey user, he still relies too much on his flame fruit. We both know how cocky he can get. He took a deep breath. "If I have to, I'll call Whitebeard and inform him of the situation. If necessary, I'll chain Ace and return him to Whitebeard personally." Luffy picked up the receiver of the Den Den Mushi and dialed the number. He rang twice, and after a moment, a voice responded, "Hello, you have reached the Whitebeard Pirates." "It's me, Marco," a familiar voice said warmly. Marco replied, "Hey, Luffy. How are things? And congratulations on your and Hancock's engagement, the paper sure made a spectacle of it." Luffy grinned. "Thanks. It wasn't that big of a deal." Marco chuckled. "Wasn't that a big deal? You proposed to Hancock at the very same place Roger got executed, that takes guts. I bet Sengoku and the Marines are furious." Luffy smiled, but then his tone turned serious. "Marco, I need to speak to Whitebeard. It's urgent." Marco's voice was cautious. "Is it about Ace?" Luffy nodded. "Yeah, it's urgent." Marco sighed. "I have to be honest with you, Pops isn't doing too well. Age is catching up to him, and Thatch's death has really taken a toll on him." Luffy could hear Marco walking in the background. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Pops, it's for you, Luffy." A gruff voice responded, "What is it, you damn dragon brat?" Luffy recognized it immediately. "Hey, old man, you're still alive." Whitebeard chuckled. "You brat. I may be old, but I can still beat you, and that snake brat too. By the way, congratulations." "Thanks, old man," Luffy replied. "But we've got a problem." He then explained what he'd found in Teach's devil fruit, describing its terrifying powers. Whitebeard's tone grew serious. "This is really serious. But you know how stubborn Ace is. He'll hunt Teach to the ends of the earth, even if you chain him and send him to me, he'll just run off again." "I know," Luffy said. "If I see him, I'll try to talk some sense into him." Whitebeard sighed heavily. "Good luck with that. By the way, where are you?" Luffy replied, "We're bringing a sick crew member to Kurha for treatment. Should I tell her you said hi?" Whitebeard's tone shifted to one of warning. "Don't even mention my name to that old hag. I still have nightmares about her. One time, on Rock's ship, I was injured badly in a battle. I tried to get up early, and that old hag broke my legs for disobeying her orders. Don't mention me to her, got it?" Luffy chuckled softly. "Got it, old man. Don't worry." He then ended the call. Hancock, listening nearby, said, "Man, Whitebeard is the strongest man in the world, but it looks like he's more afraid of her than anyone." As the Shadow Sorrow approached Drum Island, the mood on the ship was filled with worry for Nami, whose condition was critical. Nearing the port, they were suddenly greeted by a group of armed villagers, guns aimed at them. Luffy and Hancock stepped out to see what was happening. Once they reached the deck, Luffy immediately ordered his crew not to attack unless provoked. He addressed the crowd, "We have a very sick crew member on board. We urgently need medical help." One of the villagers shouted, "Get lost, pirate S." Another added, "Your kind isn't welcome here." Seeing that diplomacy wasn't working, Luffy grew angry and reached for his sword. Vivi quickly grabbed his hand, pleading, "Please, don't hurt them." Hancock urged, "Vivi, we don't have time for this. Nami is dying." Vivi spoke to Luffy and Hancock, "Please, there's no need for bloodshed. Look at their faces, they're scared." Luffy responded, "Vivi, as Hancock said, we don't have time. But if you want to talk to them, be my guest." He then turned to Yamato. "Yamato, listen. If these people attack, you know what to do." Yamato nodded reluctantly, understanding the weight of Luffy's words, that violence might be necessary. Vivi, trying to reason, pleaded, "Please, help us, we have a friend in need." Suddenly, a gunshot rang out toward Vivi. She quickly shifted into her hybrid form and used her sand powers to block the bullet. The villagers, now panicked at seeing Vivi in her hybrid fox form, shouted in fear, "A devil fruit user!" And, "Ready your weapons." Suddenly, a commanding voice intervened, "Wait. Don't fire." The Shadow Dragon pirates turned to see a tall man wearing a green coat and winter cap. He stepped forward and spoke, "You are Monkey D. Luffy, the Shadow Dragon, I presume." Luffy, recognizing a possible ally, responded, "Yes, and you must be the leader here." The man nodded, "Yes, I am Dalton." Luffy quickly explained, "Look, Dalton, we came in peace. We have a crew member who's dying, and we need Dr. Kurha. I know what happened here, that you were attacked by pirates and that coward Wapol fled. But how about we make a trade?" Dalton asked, "What kind of trade?" Luffy proposed, "You grant us the right to dock and we give you Wapol." Luffy addressed Kobe, "Kobe, get our bargaining chip." Kobe saluted and headed to the prison cells. When he dragged Wapol out, the crowd and Dalton were shocked. Wapol yelled, "Let me go. I am the king." But his demeanor changed dramatically upon seeing his former subjects and his former guard, Dalton. Dalton confronted Wapol, well, look who's back." Wapol began sweating in panic as he faced the people staring at him with rage. Luffy asked Dalton, "So, do you accept the trade? Oh, by the way, we have his doctors too. They want to make amends." Dalton, hearing this, nodded. "Okay, we have a deal." He then turned to Wapol, "Wapol, you are under arrest and will face judgment." Dalton addressed the doctors too, "All of you, if you want to make amends, you're welcome to try, but you'll have to prove yourselves." The head doctor nodded, thanking Dalton for his mercy. As they docked, Wapol was led away by two villagers. He screamed, "I am your king. You can't do this to me." Dalton thanked Luffy, "Thank you for not attacking. As soon as I saw you, I knew who you were." Luffy responded, "No problem. But where is Dr. Kurha?" Dalton pointed to a castle atop a tall mountain. "There she is. But sometimes she comes down to the village to find patients. She treats them, but she takes all their money. She's a brilliant doctor but also a real hag and con artist." Luffy smiled, thinking, old Whitebeard wasn't kidding. He spoke again, "Okay, Hancock and I will take Nami to the doctor. I'll fly us up there, and Hancock, you hold Nami so she doesn't fall off my back mid-flight." Hancock nodded. Then Vivi asked, "Luffy, may I go with you as well?" Robin spoke up too, "I'd like to accompany you. Little garden was my idea, so." Luffy cut her off, "No, Robin, it's not your fault." Jem also volunteered, "I'm going as well. If this old witch is as stubborn as Dalton says, you might need extra muscle." Luffy nodded. "Okay, but no more passengers. Me, Hancock, Vivi, Robin, and Jem will go to Kurha's place to get help for Nami." Luffy then transformed into his dragon form, leaving Dalton and the villagers stunned. Hancock, Vivi, Robin, and Jem, who was carrying Nami, got onto Luffy, but then Richie, Nami's faithful lion, jumps on Luffy as well. Luffy saw Richie jump onto his back and shouted, "Hey, I'm not a pack horse." Vivi smiled, "Oh, come on, Luffy. He's just worried for his mistress." Luffy sighed and, unfurling his massive black wings, took flight toward the mountaintop castle. As Luffy flew towards the palace, Yamato suggested the rest of the crew enjoy themselves. Dalton noticed Yamato in her kimono while the rest of Luffy's crew wore winter clothes and asked, "Aren't you cold?" Yamato replied, "No, my devil fruit makes me immune to cold. In fact, I love the cold air and snow." She then transformed into her beast form, leaving Dalton astonished. Meanwhile, on board the Shadow Sorrow, Zoro, Sanji, Kobe, and Kuro were training. Alvida, Usopp, and Kaya were in the village with Dalton, while Makita, Marion and Pudding were in the ship's kitchen. Salome, seeking warmth, was coiled next to the stove. Yamato, still in her beast form, was joyfully running around in the snow like a playful puppy. On deck, Kobe sighed, "Man, why can't I do it again?" Sanji reassured him, "Don't worry, Kobe. You unleashed Conqueror's Haki once, but Luffy told you need to train to fully master it." Kobe replied, "Yeah, but you three seem to enjoy beating the crap out of me." Kuro chimed in, "Oh, don't be a wimp, Kobe. Do you think a real fight is going to be fair?" Zoro, however, was lost in thought, pondering if he had been too harsh on Tashigi back at Logatown when he had embarrassed her and given her that scar. He was snapped out of his thoughts by Sanji's yell, "Hey, Moss Head. I said let's go to the kitchen for lunch." Zoro, jolting back to reality, said, "Oh, yeah, right." Sanji smirked mischievously, "What are you thinking so hard about? Is it that beautiful Marine Sergeant? Are you daydreaming about her?" Zoro, hearing this, bristled, "You pervy cook, what did you say?" Sanji smiled even more mischievously, "I struck a nerve." Zoro unsheathed his 3 swords, "I'll kill you." Sanji continued grinning, "Oh, Zoro has a girlfriend." Kobe and Kuro, watching the scene, were laughing at how Zoro was acting like an embarrassed teenager. On a marine ship, Smoker sat on the deck, lost in thought. He muttered to himself, soon, the Shadow Dragon will be mine." A voice suddenly cut through his thoughts. "Boy, Smoker," came a calm but commanding voice. "You sure don't know when to give up." Smoker looked up, slight annoyance on his face. "Hina, this doesn't concern you." Hina replied, "Oh, but it does. Admiral Aokiji has sent me to make sure you don't do anything stupid, like getting yourself killed." Smoker, smoking his 2 cigars, said coolly, "Listen here. I intend to bring both the Shadow Dragon and the Snake Princess to justice. Is that clear?" Hina sighed. "Man, you're incredibly confident. Or incredibly stupid. Ever since we found those soldiers in the water, they told us the Shadow Dragon and Snake Princess are currently heading to Drum Island." Suddenly, Tashigi rushed over with an urgent dispatch. "Captain Smoker. Captain Hina. Urgent dispatch from Cypher Pole." Smoker raised an eyebrow. "What is it, Tashigi?" Tashigi hurriedly explained, "Well, Cypher Pole sent us intelligence on the Shadow Dragon pirates." Hina snatched the dispatch from her and opened the file. Inside, there were posters, pictures, and a detailed report. She read aloud, "Shadow Dragon pirates classified as a level 5 threat. Monkey D. Luffy has recruited new individuals. Their identities have been confirmed. Also, the Shadow Dragon pirates are heading to Alabasta, with their intentions clearly our territory." Tashigi was stunned. Her voice trembled as she spoke, "Level 5. But, that's reserved for the most dangerous groups, Whitebeard, Big Mom, Kaido, and Red Hair Shanks." She then thrust the file onto the table, revealing the current members of the Shadow Dragon pirates, their bounties, and the names of those without bounties. Smoker and Tashigi looked at the wanted posters. The images showed a frightening lineup. Luffy at 700 million berry. Hancock at 650 million berry. Yamato at 250 million berry. Robin at 79 million berry. Kaya at 50 million berry. Kuro at 40 million berry. Nami at 35 million berry. Alvida at 30 million berry. Marianne at 29 million berry. Zoro at 25 million berry. Jem at 10 million berry. Makita at 7 million berry. Smoker's gaze lingered on Robin's poster. He frowned. How did they recruit her? Hina spoke, "I don't know, but the fact that they have the Devil's Child worries me even more." The photos of the crew members with no bounties also caught their attention. Hina pointed to Sanji's picture. "This is their cook, he was trained by Red Leg Zeph." She then pointed to Kobe's picture. "This kid isn't just their cabin boy, he's the Shadow Dragon's personal student." Next, She indicated Usopp's photo. This is their sniper. Reports say he's the son of Yasop, the sniper of the Red Hair Pirates. Hina's gaze then fell on the last two pictures, Vivi and Pudding. Both looked deeply troubling to Smoker. He bit his cigar and looked at Vivi's picture. Is that Princess Vivi? Hina nodded. Yes, she's the princess of Alabasta. She's with them now. Tashigi looked at Pudding's photo and asked, and why is she so important? Hina explained, her name is Charlotte Pudding. Her mother is Charlotte Linlin, also known as Big Mom. Tashigi froze. What? The Shadow Dragon Pirates and Big Mom. Are they allied? Smoker cut her off sharply. It doesn't matter. We're heading to Drum Island. We have to find them first. Hina warned, okay, Smoker, your funeral. But shouldn't we let Admiral Akainu handle this? Smoker shook his head firmly. No, I'm handling this myself. I'll see this through. Tashigi glared at Zoro's poster, touching the scar on her face. I'll find you, Zoro. You will pay. Meanwhile, on Drum Island, Luffy, Hancock, Vivi, Robin, Jem, and Richie had just arrived at the top of the mountain. As they entered the palace, they immediately noticed that Hancock wasn't handling the cold very well. Luffy asked concern evident in his voice, "Hey, Hancock, are you okay?" Hancock shivered and replied, "I'll be fine. But you know as well as I do, thanks to my devil fruit, I'm very sensitive to the cold." As they entered the palace, they were all shocked to see that the main hall was completely covered in snow. Luffy said, "What happened here?" Jem examined the scene and spoke, "Captain, look, the main door is open." Luffy moved to close the door. "Let's close it," he said. Just as Jem and Luffy reached to shut the door, Robin, noticing something unusual, used her devil fruit powers, sprouting arms on Luffy and Jem, to hold their hands back. Luffy looked at her. "Robin, what are you doing?" Jem nodded in agreement. "Yeah, we're just trying to close the door." Robin pointed upward. "Look." Luffy and Jem looked up and saw a nest with baby snowbirds perched on top of the door. Robin explained, "I believe this door is open for a reason." Luffy nodded. "Fine. It looks like all the other doors are closed. Let's go to one of the rooms." They wandered through the palace, passing empty halls and thick snow drifting inside. Suddenly, Luffy, Vivi, and Hancock called out in unison, "Dr. Kurha! Dr. Kurha!" But there was no response. Luffy loudly shouted, "Hey, old hag! Are you there?" Hancock, hearing Luffy's foolish call, quickly grabbed his ear and scolded, "Luffy! You know what Whitebeard told us, don't insult her." Luffy, trying to free himself, responded, "Ah, let me go. Besides, I'm only calling her an old hag, thinking she'll respond immediately." Hancock shook her head, exasperated. "Man, you can be such a child sometimes." As they entered one of the rooms, they found it fitted with beds and a fireplace. Luffy spoke, "Good, this looks like her clinic." Jem gently placed Nami on one of the beds. Robin said, "Luffy, it looks like she isn't here." Vivi added, "Luffy, it looks like she's gone." Hancock, who had already been building a fire by the fireplace, responded, "Dalton told us she sometimes visits the village, so she's probably out there." Robin nodded. "We should wait here." Suddenly, a voice echoed from the doorway, "Who is in my house?" Luffy turned sharply. "Looks like the doctor is in." The door swung open, and to their surprise, they saw a slender woman whose well-wrinkled face clearly showed her advanced age. She dressed in a style more suitable for a much younger woman, including a navel ring, a midriff-bearing shirt, a purple blazer, and low-riding purple pants. She had small sunglasses that she used to wear pushed up on her forehead, even when she wasn't wearing glasses. She adorned herself with bracelets and rings on her left hand. What caught everyone's attention even more was a toddler-sized human-reindeer hybrid standing beside her. Luffy, seeing the reindeer, exclaimed, "A mink." Kurha scowled at the intruders and demanded, "Who are you, and what are you doing in my house?" Luffy approached, hurriedly explaining, "Dr. Kurha, my friend is dying," but his words were abruptly cut off when Kurha kicked him in the head with her foot. Luffy flew into the wall, the impact so powerful it broke his nose. He scrammed, clutching his face. "What was that for?" Kurha, unfazed, snapped, "For calling me an old hag." Jem, standing nearby and trying to defend Luffy, shouted, "Hey! Who do you think you are?" Before he could finish, Kurha kicked him in the ribs, breaking a few. Jem collapsed to the ground, shouting in pain. Kurha turned to him sharply. What was that? Jem, pale and clutching his side, stammered, nothing you old, I mean, Dr. Kurha, I didn't mean anything. Kurha's expression softened just a bit. She looked at Nami and said, okay, let's see the patient. Then, glancing at Luffy and Jem, she added, and you two look like you need medical assistance as well. Luffy and Jem both shouted in unison, you think? Kurha approached Nami, who was burning with fever and in a critical condition. She examined her quickly and said, she's in critical condition. Chopper, we need to treat her immediately. Luffy, still holding his nose from Kurha's swift kick, thought to himself, Chopper. That's his name. Chopper, the shy reindeer. Chopper, speaking in a gentle tone, nodded, yes, doctrine. Kurha then turned to Luffy and said, I will take 70% of your treasure as payment. Luffy, thinking to himself, she's truly a rip-off artist, he replied aloud, fine, just help her. Kurha nodded. Then, with a swift move, she grabbed Luffy's broken nose and adjusted it perfectly. Luffy let out a sharp scream, ah. That hurt. Kurha smirked. No problem, she said simply, then her and Chopper rushed Nami into the next room for treatment. Hancock stepped closer to Luffy and said, man, no wonder Whitebeard was scared of her. Luffy, clutching his nose, grimaced. Yeah, she's really an old witch. Robin smiled faintly. Yeah, she's quite a piece of work. But did you see that adorable little reindeer? Vivi nodded. Yeah, he's really cute, the way he has that blue nose. Hancock, leaning in slightly, whispered to Luffy, I need to tell you something Nami told me. Promise you won't freak out. Luffy raised an eyebrow. Okay. Besides, I just got my nose broken by an old woman. I think nothing could shock me more. Hancock hesitated for a moment, then said, well, oh boy. This is going to be awkward. In the village, Alvida, Kaya, and Usopp sat in a small cabin with Dalton, who was sharing his story about what happened there. Dalton explained, a pirate by the name of Blackbeard attacked this village. Alvida conned eyebrow at the name. Alvida spoke sharply, Blackbeard. Really? Dalton nodded, yes. And speaking of your captain, he hesitated, then continued, 2 days ago, we had a visitor, Ace. He was looking for Blackbeard. He told me that if the Shadow Dragon comes here, I should tell him that he will be waiting for him in Alabasta. Kaya interjected, we should definitely tell Yamato. Usopp pointed out the window. Yamato's still in her beast form, running around in the snow. They all saw Yamato outside, energetically darting through the snow in her beast form. Alvida and Kaya exchanged glances and nodded, clearly realizing that their disciplinarian and trainer was running like a happy puppy. Suddenly, Pudding burst into the cabin, shooting her eyes wildly. Usopp, Alvida, Kaya, we've got problems. Alvida quickly responded, what is it? Pudding gasped, a marine warship is approaching. That marine captain from Logatown has followed us. She looked out the window and saw the ship in the distance. Where's Yamato? She asked. Usopp pointed again at Yamato outside, who was happily playing in the snow. Pudding looked a little embarrassed and said, our third in command is busy playing in the snow. Kaya quickly said, so what? We've all learned observation hockey, plus Alvida, Zoro, Sanji and Kuro unlock armament hockey, and with my devil fruit, we can handle this. Not to mention that Yamato has all 3 types of hockey. She then transformed her body into lightning and shot outside. Yamato turned around and saw Kaya flying toward her. Hey, what's up? She called out, raising an eyebrow. Kaya replied, we've got company. Yamato looked toward the docks and saw the marine warship closing in. She smiled and said, looks like we've got visitors. On the dock, aboard the Shadow Sorrow, Zoro, Sanji, Kuro, Mikita, Marianne, and Kobe were all ready and waiting. Zoro spoke confidently, you guys can leave this to me. Kuro shook his head. No, you don't. That's my fight. Mikita grinned. Come on, I want to test my training. Marianne, holding her paintbrush, simply said, me too. Sanji looked at them and said, yeah, you, Mosshead, don't be selfish. Then, his gaze drifted to the approaching warship. He noticed Tashigi on board and smirked. Ooh, you want to impress your girl. Zoro blushed and shouted in embarrassment and anger, "She's not my girl, you pervy cook." Kobe laughed loudly. "Don't worry, Zoro. Soon enough, you two will be kissing in private," he teased. Zoro's face turned bright red, and the others couldn't help but burst out laughing at his expense. Zoro yelled at Kobe, "You rubber bastard." Marianne cut him off. "Hey, leave Kobe alone." Suddenly, Smoker's voice rang out from the marine ship. "Shadow Dragon pirates, surrender now." As the warship drew closer, Smoker, Hina, Tashigi, and some marines jumped onto the dock, landing on the Shadow Sorrow. Seeing Hina, Sanji's eyes widened, and he immediately went into perverted mode. Woo! What a hottie. But in an instant, he was struck on the head with a frying pan by Makita, who scolded, "Pudding and Luffy told me what to do if you go into pervert mode, Sanji." Sanji whimpered, "Mickey-chan, that hurt." Smoker, unfazed by the chaos, announced, "You are all under arrest." Suddenly, Smoker began turning into smoke, but he was interrupted when he saw a large club approaching. It struck him in the head, catapulting him onto the shore. He hit the ground hard, and standing nearby was Yamato, in her hybrid form, looking at him with a fierce expression. Smoker looked up and said, "Oni Princess Yamato." Yamato replied calmly, well, Smokey, are you here to bring Luffy and Hancock in? Surely you're not that stupid going after us on your own." Smoker, frustrated, said, "You're under arrest." Yamato smirked and challenged, "Come and get me." Meanwhile, inside the palace, Hancock had just told Luffy about Nami's crush on him and her. He was in shock. He stammered, "Oh okay, what now?" Hancock responded lightly, "Well, this is new. But honestly, I don't mind. I kind of like Nami too." Luffy looked surprised. "Me too. But right now, let's focus on getting her better. After that, we can talk about this thing." His face turned red with embarrassment as he thought, me, Nami, and Hancock. In a love triangle. He hesitated. "Well, since she doesn't mind, and I think Nami is actually really attractive, oops, I'm starting to sound like Sanji." The atmosphere was tense as Smoker stared down Yamato, who was in her hybrid form. Smoker smirked. "Surrender now, or do you think your daddy will come to save you?" He taunted. Yamato, hearing the insult, was consumed with fury. She hated her father, Kaido, and this rage surged through her. She unleashed a powerful blast of Conqueror's Haki, shooting a wave of overwhelming pressure at Smoker. Her voice roared, "What did you say, Smoker?" Hina, witnessing this, looked less confident. The blast was incredibly powerful. Over 70% of the Marines on the field were knocked unconscious. The Marines collapsed, overwhelmed by her haki. Hina thought, "Shit, she's really serious." Hina's voice echoed with unwavering resolve. "Smoker, we've got to get out of here." But Smoker, stubborn as a mule, shook his head. "No, the Shadow Dragon pirates are mine." The crew of the Shadow Sorrow was stunned. They couldn't believe how strong Yamato's Conqueror's Haki was. Makita nervously spoke, "Wow, I didn't know Yamato was this strong." Kobe, equally nervous, added, "Yeah, remind me not to piss her off." The remaining Marines, struggling too, looked exhausted, Tashigi included, but she kept her eyes on Zoro. The sight of him made her blood boil, and the scar on her face was a reminder how he humiliated her. Suddenly, she charged in anger. She took out her sword and rushed toward Zoro, shouting, "Rorona Zoro. You'll pay for what you did to me in Logia Town." As she swung her sword, Kuro blocked her strike with his claw blades. He looked at Tashigi with a cold expression and said, "No, you don't. You're my prey now." Kuro then spotted two metal cages approaching him. He dodged just in time, realizing they were from Hina. He smirked. "Oh, looks like she's got a devil fruit, huh?" Zoro, seeing this, shouted, "Hey! She's mine," and prepared to finish the fight. He put on his bandana, pulled out his 3 swords, 1 in his mouth and 2 in his hands, and covered them all with armament haki. Zoro tells Tashigi, "I warned you, girl, to stay away, now you will see what it means to challenge me." Hina, noticing the chaos, shouted to the Marines, "Take aim." But suddenly, the skies roared with thunder and lightning began to crackle. Kuro, stunned, exclaimed, "No. Kaya. Not fair." Kaya's voice responded from the sky. L4. Lightning shot from the sky, hitting the remaining Marine soldiers and knocking them out cold. The Marines were stunned and overwhelmed, their forces crippled. Only Hina, Tashigi, and Smoker remained standing, exhausted but still alert, glowering at the chaos unfolding around them. Kaya descended from the sky, shrouded in lightning. She landed gracefully, and the rest of the crew surrounded her, looking at her with anger and concern. Kaya asked nervously, "What's going on?" Nikita, frustrated, spoke, "Kaya, you're so selfish." Kuro continued, "Yeah, you took out all the Marines. Left none for us." Kaya spoke, "Sorry, guess I got carried away." All the Shadow Dragon pirates spoke in unison, "You think?" Kaya then turned sharply toward Zoro, who was already mid-step, ready to attack. She shot, "Don't." Zoro hesitated but then said calmly, "Out of my way." Sanji called out to him, "Hey, Moss Head, come down. Look, I get it, she's a stupid Marine, but—" Zoro interrupted, "It's not that," and whispered, "Don't worry, I won't kill her." Tashigi, still clutching her sword, looked frightened but stayed alert. Zoro approached her, ready to fight. Tashigi nodded, prepared, but he didn't even bother to block her attack. He simply dodged each strike. Hina tried to help, but Kobe stretched out his arm and wrapped it around her. "Let me go, you punk," Hina growled. Kobe smiled mischievously. "Don't think so." Hina used her strength and broke free from his embrace. She looked at him and smiled, "Not bad, kid." Suddenly, a shout from the sky caught everyone's attention. Nikita was floating high up in the air. She said, 10,000 kilo press. Hina dodged at the last second. She shouted with anger, "Don't think I'll go down so easy." Kobe grinned and said, "Gear second." He vanished and reappeared behind Hina, landing a strong punch on her back. Hina screamed in pain but managed to get up, smiling fiercely. She threw off her marine coat into the snow and looked at Kobe and Nikita. "Okay, round 2, she spoke. Zoro's fight with Tashigi was escalating. She was furious at being dismissed and not taken seriously. Her eyes welled with tears. She shouted, "Why? Why don't you take me seriously?" Zoro, desperate, said, "Fine. You asked for it." He drew his 3 swords in a flash. 3-sword style, onigiri. Tashigi tried to parry, but as soon as their swords clashed, Zoro's 3 blades shattered her katana into hundreds of tiny pieces, the shards flying everywhere. The blades struck her stomach, and she cried out in agony. She was cut across the stomach and chest, then passed out from shock. Zoro sheathed his swords grimly. Sanji yelled, "Hey, Moss Head. What did you do?" Zoro ignored him and looked over at Kaya, and told her to help the unconscious Tashigi. Kaya nodded and headed toward her, tending to her wounds. Hina, seeing Tashigi covered in blood, shouted in anger, "You damn pirates. You will pay for this." Hina, who rarely showed any emotion, was now visibly livid. She had always liked Tashigi, and seeing her lying on the ground, covered in blood, made her furious. She also realized the situation was hopeless and cursed Smoker for his arrogance. Meanwhile, Smoker was having a really tough day. He was getting thoroughly beaten by Yamato. He thought to himself, "Man, she's tough." Yamato, still simmering with anger but cooling down a bit, addressed Smoker, "You're outmatched, Smoker. Give up, and no harm will come to you or your men." But Smoker, ever stubborn, had no intention of surrendering. At this point, he didn't care anymore about his men or even Tashigi. He activated his smoke powers and charged at Yamato, shouting, "I don't care anymore. You and your captain are mine." However, just then, he received a sharp chop to the neck from Hina, who had enough of his stubbornness. Smoker fell to the ground, unconscious. Hina spoke resolutely, "We surrender." Yamato returned to her normal form and nodded. "Fine. You, this idiot, and the wounded sergeant are our prisoners. The rest can leave." Hina agreed and then addressed the remaining Marines, some still recovering from Yamato's hockey blast and others shocked and injured from Kaya's thunder attack. "Get out of here now," she ordered. The soldiers, wounded and weak, hesitated to leave, but Hina's icy glare made them reconsider. They nodded and slowly retreated to their ship. As they departed, Hina and Smoker were placed in seastone cuffs, while Kaya carefully tended to Tashigi's wounds. Thankfully, Zoro's cuts weren't deep, and Tashigi was in stable condition. Meanwhile, at the palace, Luffy, Hancock, Jem, Vivi, Robin, and Richie waited anxiously for Dr. Kurha. The atmosphere was tense. Richie let out a sad growl, but Vivi gently patted him and said, "Hey, it's going to be okay. Richie, Nami's in good hands." Luffy, who had 2 gases in his nose, and Jem, whose torso was badly banged up and lying in a bed, spoke quietly. "Speak for yourself," they muttered, grimacing. Robin, standing nearby, said with a hint of irritation, "Well, you two brought this on yourselves." Hancock nodded solemnly. "Yes, and you, Luffy, you should know better than to insult an old woman." Luffy shot her a glance. "She's hardly your average old woman," he said defensively. Suddenly, the doors swung open, and Dr. Kurha stepped out. "The treatment is working," she announced confidently. Luffy immediately stood up, eager. "That's great, Dr. Kurha." Kurha, settling into her chair, took a bottle of wine and took a sip. "Yes, but it was close. Some of the parasites had matured. I had to remove them by surgery. For the rest of them I gave her a mix of the medicine as well as some painkillers to help her sleep. She needs to rest for it bluntly." Vivi, overhearing this, looked worried. 10 days. We don't have that kind of time." Kurha shot her a sharp glance. "Come, now. Let me be clear, she's healing, but she needs her rest. Rest assured, she'll be awake soon. The only side effect is that she'll be starving. Be thankful she's human. If she were a wild beast, her hunger would have made her pounce on the first thing it saw as prey." Luffy, Hancock, Vivi, Jem, and Robin exchanged worried glances. Luffy then spoke, "Dr. Kurha, we forgot to tell you something." Kurha looked sharply at him. "Don't tell me, she's got a zone devil fruit, doesn't she?" Luffy nodded. "Yes." Kurha's eyes widened. "Oh, shit, what kind?" Before Luffy could answer, a frantic cry echoed through the room. Chopper yelled, "Help, she turned into a black panther, and she's trying to eat me." Nami, in her panther form, still under the effects of the medicine, eyes wild and almost crazy. She growled, "Get back here. You're my lunch." Seeing this, Luffy shouted, "Shit. We need to catch her." Robin quickly crossed her arms. "On it," she said, using her devil fruit to spun arms on Nami that grabbed her paws. Nami on the floor struggled, snarling, "Let me go. That is my prey." Kurha rapidly drew a syringe and shot her with a powerful tranquilizer. "This will knock her out for 40 minutes, Kurha explained. "By then, she'll be back to normal." As the tranquilizer took effect, Nami collapsed into a serene sleep, the wild expression fading from her face. 40 minutes later, Nami slowly woke up. She suddenly shot upright, but upon realizing she was in an unfamiliar place, panic set in. She looked around frantically. "Where am I? What's happened? Why am I wearing pajamas?" A soothing voice echoed, "Finally awake. Are you, Nami?" She turned around and saw Luffy and Hancock standing at the back of the room. Relieved, she exclaimed, "Luffy. Hancock." But then she remembered something. Her face turned red as she suddenly looked embarrassed and nervous. She recalled what she had told Hancock earlier. "Oop," she thought, "shit." Luffy sat on her bed and gently patted her shoulder. "It's okay," he reassured her. "Hancock told me everything." Nami's face grew even redder, but Hancock explained softly, "Nami, we're willing to accept you as our girl, if you want." Overwhelmed, Nami suddenly shifted from nervousness and embarrassment to happiness. She hugged both Luffy and Hancock tightly. Then she looked at Luffy and, without hesitation, kissed him passionately. As their lips parted, she turned and kissed Hancock as well, making them both blush bright red. Nami smiled and said, "Thank you. But, where are we? And what happened to your nose, Luffy?" Luffy, feeling a bit embarrassed about his nose, explained to Nami what happened, that she almost died. Just then, Richie rushed into the room, the massive lion heading straight for Nami. He began licking her face enthusiastically. Nami chuckled, "Hey, Richie, stop. Stop," she said, laughing. "I'm fine." Robin and Vivi entered the room next. Both of them immediately went over and hugged Nami warmly. Nami smiled happily, feeling grateful. Suddenly, another voice spoke up from behind them. "Nice to see you're better." Nami turned around and saw Jem lying in a bed, his torso bandaged. She asked him, "Jem, what happened to you?" Jem looked away and replied, "I'd rather not talk about it." Nami looked around and saw an old woman wearing clothes that clearly were not suited for her age, and a strange reindeer creature with a pink cylinder on its head, hiding behind her leg. Nami cautiously asked, "Hey there, who are you?" Chopper, shocked, yelled, "Are you serious? You tried to eat me, human." Nami, confused, looked at him. Luffy sighed and then began to explain what had happened 40 minutes earlier. Nami's face turned red with embarrassment. "Oh, sorry, little guy. I wasn't myself." Chopper looked at Nami still angry. Sorry. Luffy then said, "Hey, Chopper, give her a break. You two will be on the same ship soon." Nami raised an eyebrow. "What?" Luffy nodded decisively. "Yep, Chopper is coming with us." Nami looked even more confused, but Hancock began to speak. "While you were out cold, we stood down with Dr. Kurha. She has also joined us, but she's staying here as an ambassador to our crew." Kurha chuckled and said, "I only joined because those so-called doctors need a good teacher. I was starting to get bored here." Luffy grinned. "Come on, Granny. You missed this life." Kurha looked at him with a threatening glare. "What did you call me?" Luffy, waving his hands dismissively, said, "Nothing. Nothing." Everyone burst into laughter. Hancock added, "All right, let's head back to the village." Kurha nodded. "Okay, and you need to tell Dalton about my plan for this island. He will be angry, but having that fat ass back on the throne, with me and Dalton pulling the strings, is the best option. Oh, and Shadow Dragon, follow me." Luffy followed Kurha into the next room. She leaned in closer and whispered, "I trust you with Chopper. Even though I don't show it, that little guy is like a son to me. If you hurt him in any way." Before she finished, Luffy quickly cut her off. "Don't worry. We'll take good care of him. Plus, he's a funny little reindeer." Kurha nodded. "Yes, he is special. Oh, and one more thing." Luffy, confused, asked, "What?" Suddenly, Kurha turned and kicked him sharply in the groin. Luffy yelped in pain, falling to the floor and clutching himself. "Ah, that hurt." Kurha, standing calmly, said coldly, "That's for calling me Granny, you brat." She then exited the room, leaving Luffy still on the floor, groaning in pain. Looking at him with a faint smile, she thought, well. Captain Rocks, looks like you got a worthy successor. Rest in peace, old friend." Luffy, tears in his eyes, painfully muttered, "Old witch, I'll get her for this." As Luffy recovered from his encounter with Kurha, he transformed into a dragon and flew his crew back down to the village. Upon arriving, Luffy, Hancock, Nami, Robin, and Vivi were shocked, and a little amused, to find the rest of the crew had a battle with the Marines. They noticed the captives, Smoker, Hina, and Tashigi. Luffy laughed mockingly as he approached Smoker. "You're lucky I wasn't here, Smokey, or I'd have put you 6 feet under for your insolence." When he turned his gaze to Tashigi and saw her injuries, he learned that Zoro had been the one who gave her those cuts. Luffy thought to himself, damn, didn't think he had it in him. Sanji informed him that Zoro had retreated to the ship, saying something about needing to clear his mind. Luffy nodded and then turned to Sanji, Kobe, and Kuro, instructing them to escort their marine guests to the ship and place them in the cells. He informed his crew that they were having a party to welcome Chopper aboard and hinted at another surprise for everyone. Once they left, Luffy spoke with Dalton about Kurha's plan. Initially, Dalton was against it, but with some convincing from the old witch, he reluctantly agreed that it was the best option. He heaved a heavy sigh and accepted it. When Wapol was brought in, still screaming, Luffy told him to shut up and listen. He explained that as of today, Wapol would be reinstated as king, but he would be required to do as Dalton and Kurha say. Additionally, Drum Island was now a territory of the Shadow Dragon pirates. "If you're a good little puppet, you'll live," Luffy threatened softly. "And you'll even be rewarded. Or you can refuse and, well, die here and now." Wapol hesitated but accepted the terms. He was arrogant, but he wasn't a fool. As Luffy exited the room, he was visibly tired from the intense negotiations. Hancock and Nami were waiting for him, and they both embraced him warmly. "How did it go?" Hancock asked. Luffy answered, "We have a new territory, our first in paradise." Nami chimed in, "Excellent. How much cash will we be getting from here?" Luffy and Hancock both smiled. Hancock, "Reamer your old self, Nami." "Yes, Nami," Luffy added, "but to answer your question, not even one berry." Nami reacted with exaggerated frustration. What? That's not fair. We should at least charge for our protection. Luffy chuckled and hugged Nami. Don't worry. Hancock and I have a present for you. Hancock nodded, reached into her pocket, and pulled out a bracelet with 2 silver circles. She handed it to Nami. Nami, puzzled, said, "What is this?" "It's pretty, sure, but..." Luffy explained, "That's Captain John's treasure marker. If the legend is true, this bracelet is a key to his fortune." Hancock added, "Yes, and we decided to give it to you as a present." Nami's heart pounded with excitement, her eyes turning into berry symbols. She rushed to kiss both Hancock and Luffy, exclaiming, "Thank you, thank you. Treasure, all mine." Luffy gently reminded her, "Hey, none of that. You get to keep 25%, but the rest will be split with the crew." Nami puffed her cheeks in mock annoyance. Not fair. Her antics made both Hancock and Luffy laugh. Luffy smiled warmly, saying, "Yep, she's back to her old self." As the 3 walked toward their ship, Nami inquired, "So, where is this treasure located?" Luffy replied, "Well, it's on a small island near Amazon Lily, which is why after our business in Alabasta, we're heading to Skypia first. We'll recruit our main gunner and meet some friends. Then, we head to Amazon Lily." Nami asked, "Really? The female-only island? Will they welcome us?" Hancock assured her, "Don't worry. My sister, Sandersonia, is the Empress, and she knows Luffy. But we might have to put Sanji on a leash." Luffy smiled. "Don't worry about him. I'll just remind him where he might end up if he acts like a total pervert in front of the Amazons. Plus, Nami, there's someone we'd like you to meet there." Nami, curious, said, "Really? Who? I don't know any Amazons." Hancock smiled mysteriously. "It's a surprise." As they approached their ship, they were greeted by Vivi, who informed them that some of the crew were on the ship while others were still in the village. Hancock nodded, shivering slightly. "Let's go inside. I hate the cold. I could use a slice of cake and some hot chocolate with a splash of rum." Luffy nodded in agreement. "That sounds like a good idea." Nami and Vivi agreed as well. Upon boarding their ship and entering the dining hall, they came upon an unusual scene. Karoo was shivering, wrapped in a blanket. Chopper was examining him, and Salome was gently wrapped around him to keep him warm. Vivi panicked, "Karoo, what happened?" Pudding explained, "Well, Salome and I found poor Karoo in the freezing water. Luckily, Sanji, Kobe, and Kuro arrived in time to fish him out." Chopper put down his stethoscope and spoke reassuringly, "He seems to be getting warmer. Thanks for the help, Salome." Salome nodded in response. Luffy, puzzled, asked, "What happened here?" Chopper explained, "From what Karoo told me, he was trying to help Zoro." Hancock asked, "You can understand him?" Chopper nodded, "Yes, since I'm an animal as well, I can understand them." Pudding added, "It's true. Luffy, look at this." "Karoo, do you mind?" she asked. Karoo nodded, and Pudding activated her devil fruit power, pulling out a film reel of the duck's memories. It showed Zoro on deck, angrily taking off his shirt before jumping into the freezing water. Luffy reassured the duck, "Hey, it's okay. Zoro probably just went for a swim." Hancock, a little worried, asked, "But where is Zoro?" Vivi suddenly reacted, "Oh no, I think I know. Well, when you were flying us, I thought I saw a man wearing only pants, walking in the snow." Hearing this, everyone on the ship responded, "He got lost again." Luffy, slurred, "Oh well, once I finish my hot chocolate, I'll go get him. After I rescue Zoro I will give him a good scolding for getting lost again." They said their goodbyes to Dalton and Dr. Kurha, then set sail. As they left, the party erupted, food and alcohol kept flowing endlessly. Luffy, heavily drunk, struggled to stand, Hancock and Nami holding him to keep him steady. He slurred, "First, I wanna welcome Chopper to the crew." Luffy continued, "Where are you, Chopper?" Makita spoke, "He's sleeping, probably not used to drinking too much." Luffy hiccuped and said, "Don't worry about him. We'll train him to drink like us." Then he turned to Nami and Hancock, declaring loudly, "And Nami's now my girl. And Hancock's girl, too." The other Shadow Dragon pirates were shocked but, after a moment, accepted it and kept drinking. All this was interrupted by Sanji, who was lying in the corner, looking depressed. Hancock, noticing him, sternly told him, "Stop acting like a child." She then mentioned, "We're going to Amazon Lily soon." Hearing that, Sanji suddenly jumped up and started acting like a pervert again. Luffy, in a cold voice, warned, "Sanji, if you don't behave yourself in Amazon Lily, you're getting a one-way trip to Okama Island, minimum, for a month." Sanji immediately began begging and crying for mercy, while the others burst out laughing at his expense.